Hello and welcome to our October webinar for the APAC team. So my name is Rio and I'm the team lead for the Priority Services team. Unfortunately, Adam is on leave today and he's gone for a short little jog up in the Blue Mountains, so you're stuck with me. But before I introduce our topic and speakers, if you have any, just for a little housekeeping, if you have any questions throughout the sessions, please use the chat, as we'd love to hear from you. We'll try and answer them throughout the session. The session is going to be recorded and will be available on the community afterwards. So let's move on to the topic for today, which is hybrid learning. So today we have our resident K-12 teacher, guru, learning consultant, all-round legend, and she's going to be giving you some tips that hopefully you can use in your classroom or hybrid classroom. We also have Logan that's going to be helping out on the chat. So give us a wave, Logan. All right. So I might hand it over to you, Sue, for you to take us through this this presentation.
Sure. Thanks, Rio. I've just shared my screen. Hopefully you can see that. Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm gonna welcome everybody. I'm hopefully going to take about 30 so minutes of your time just to have a look at how Canvas can support you in your hybrid teaching journey. This year's been a year like no other in terms of obviously online learning and then blended learning, or now hybrid teaching, terms that we I guess were sort of thrown into quite fast as COVID hit. And so we're just trying to provide a bit of support where we can and just talk you through a few things that we have seen work really well in Canvas. Before I get started, I just want to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land in which we meet on. I'm based in Sydney, so I acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. I pay respect to their elders, both past and present, and emerging, their ongoing knowledge, resilience and struggles as the first people of this land that we now call Australia, and I thank them for having us on their country. Okay, now just to contextualize this first slide, you may have seen this if you've been, I'm a member of a teachers memes Facebook group. You may have seen something like this or similar doing the rounds, but I wanted to sort of start the session off today by really giving our sort of like appreciation, just you know, we're astounded and amazed at what teachers are doing at the moment in terms of juggling face-to-face learning, online learning, and all the myriad of things that come with that. It's like, it's just incredible what our teachers all around the world are doing currently. And so there's been a lot of memes, I guess, come out, some very positive, some very real. And this one, I think, struck me last night as I was looking through this Facebook group about really what it feels like to teach online and to teach fully online, you know, so not necessarily something that you've like made a conscious decision to do as a, like, I've grown up and want to be an online teacher, but actually in terms of, you know, I'm now teaching online out of necessity. And so, yeah, this sort of diagram that this teacher has drawn about what online teaching feels to them and how, you know, what it's like to be on Zoom with multiple people. I know what it's like to be on Zoom with multiple adults in our company, and that's adults. So when you've got younger children and teenagers, all the different things that you got to do is just huge. And then what it feels like when you finish that session and you've, you know, checked your inbox and you've got pings galore and you've got things to respond to, and face-to-face teachers as well, the, you know, face-to-face students as well. There's just so much. And so I think we want to preface everything that we say today with acknowledging that the struggle is very real, and we're just here to try and help give a few tips and tricks. And so happy to pass to anyone on the panel to support that. If you've got
100%. So I think that's a meme that cuts to the heart of it. It's cold, but that's the truth. I think we want to acknowledge that it is very difficult for many people. And like you said, especially if there's not a conscious choice that you've made, but it's just a situation that comes upon you. I think we want to hear what you are going through too. So we're watching the comments. If you can put stuff in the comments around what your situation's like. And, are you a teacher? Did you make that choice? Is it harder? How is it harder? We can try to respond to that as the chat continues. We're going to be very sensitive about telling you to do more things. I think we're going to focus on tips and try to make it as easy as possible. Sue has a fantastic little handout that you'll get at the end with links to different things. So, you know, if you go through things pretty quickly, don't feel like you need to take screenshots or, you know, take notes. What we want to do is to have a conversation with you. Yeah, so put stuff into the comments, and we can see the comments that they come through, and we can respond to them during the chat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
thanks.
I can only sympathise with people. You know, as teachers are probably watching this, I am probably guilty of one of those students that appear on this meme, and I think, you know, Jim is. I think Jim is actually Adam. So there you go.
Yeah, I think we can all imagine those students that are just, yeah, some will respond really well to this new methodology. Some will really struggle. And again, as teachers, it's we're always trying to reach as many as we can in what we deliver. And so, yeah, I think that's what we're trying to help you with a little bit today. So what I want to talk to you about today is a different methodology, I guess, of thinking about Canvas in terms of your teaching. And you may be doing this already, or it may be a scenario that I described that resonates with you a little bit more. But I just want to tell it from my point of view when I first started teaching with Canvas back in about 7 years ago. When I first started teaching with Canvas, I very much had my face-to-face content, and Canvas was an addition to that. So I knew of lessons that would work better with a little bit of ICT input, or with a little bit of engagement online, or, you know, I had a YouTube video that was great and I wanted to share it with my students. So it was like I put a couple of things on Canvas. But the more I became a seasoned Canvas educator, what I then did was drove my lessons through Canvas. And so more and more, I think about 2014 became like the crux year for me, where the department I was running at the time, we built our Canvas courses and we taught from them. So we taught face-to-face, but from Canvas. So that if I was away for a week or a kid had got glandular fever, they just followed the material on Canvas. So I guess in our sort of frame, we were beginning to sort of drive from Canvas. And that's what I really want to do today, sort of try and join the dots between not having Canvas as an addition, but having Canvas as the driver of your learning. And so we're going to use this metaphor of driving, of you sort of in the front of the school bus, a bit cheeky and jovial in our imagery today, but to really try and show you what I mean by that. I'm not going to do any live demonstration of actual building content or anything like that today, but I am going to demo out of one of my English courses to just show you what it could be like when you're using Canvas as the driver for your whole year's content. And that's, of course, not going away tonight, freaking out, going and building a whole year's worth of content. It's a gradual thing, and it becomes something that you amass over time, of course. But this is a great time to actually lean on your colleagues and build things together that can be used and used and used. So I'm going to structure the demo today around this 10 tips for success. And yeah, thinking very much about this driving metaphor. I think if you've heard me speak before, you know English teaching is my background. So I'm going to very much employ this, what we would call extended metaphor, for this discussion today. So my first tip is to, as I say, make Canvas the driver. Use that as the backbone to your classroom, so the backbone to your learning, and then branch off anything that's either face-to-face or synchronous sessions or anything like that from Canvas. But your material is there for anybody to access whenever they want. So that's the first tip, Canvas being the driver. The second tip, as you make Canvas the driver, is to make it work for you. So we have things that we call module requirements. And so as we construct your modules, begin to actually think about what are the students doing with each aspect of the learning that I'm putting in here. And so when you put module requirements on, it's going to really help students to see what it is that you want them to do with each item that you put on. So this is my English course. As I said, I'm just going to take you into a module that has module requirements switched on and show you what I mean. So let's find this is my animal farm unit. And first of all, I'm going to do a bit of zooming now, so just indulge me a second. First of all, I've got module requirements switched on here. So you can see complete all items is the first thing that I'm instructing students to do. And then as we go through the actual unit itself, I've used a bit of emojis to kind of make this a little bit more interesting as we go through the unit. But I've got my text headers for my sequence. And then you can see underneath each item, I've actually got what they need to do with it. So these are what we call the module requirements. So for this item, they need to just view it. This is a page and it's got their information on for the assessment and the overview. This one, for example, is more content. They need to actually mark this one as done. So they'll tick it as done, then they'll be able to move into the next thing. With this one, this is a quiz. It's worth 7 marks, but to move on in their learning, I want them to score at least 4. This one is a discussion. So if you're familiar with our platform already, you'll see the different icons that you can have that you should be familiar with. So this is a discussion icon. This one, they have to contribute to the discussion. So each time the module requirements are referring them to what it is that they need to do. Hopefully, as you train your students, that would take away the sort of like, sir, miss, what's next, whatever, what do we need to do now? Because you're stepping them through their learning, and each one has got those imperative verbs, just very simple. You've got to contribute, you've got to view, you've got to read it, you've got to mark it as done, that sort of thing. So that's my first tip in terms of using signposts. My third one is check the gas. Okay, so checking the gas, what I mean here, and I get that's probably quite an American term, but yeah, check the petrol, check the gas, check in with students. And what I mean here in terms of checking the gas is checking in using formative assessment methods. So as we know, there's no point just teaching to the majority if obviously you've got to pitch a lesson somewhere, but there's no point moving on with material if the majority or some of your students haven't understood what it is that you're talking about. So I'll give you an example in Check the Gas. I use a technique called Hinge Questions, which is just a really simple practice quiz. So it doesn't go into the mark book. It's just a practice, whereas I'm using the information for me as a teacher to decide whether or not I need to move on, reteach, etc. in terms of my material. I just presented on this last week at CanvasCon if you're interested. But a Hinge question, just really quickly, is a formative assessment practice where your lesson hinges on the information that you receive. So this Hinge question is basically getting students to demonstrate their understanding of what is a fundamental term for animal farm. And so if they don't understand this, they can't really go on with the novel. And so the question is as follows. Fundamental to your understanding of animal farm is your understanding of what an allegory means. If they don't get allegory, they're not going to understand really the crux of the novel. So here's my definitions of allegory. Each one's nearly right, but not quite, except for the right one. But in them choosing a wrong answer, it would diagnose for me what their issues are so I can reteach and fix that issue. So what I want to then show you is how you can use this then to check the gas, to form your teaching. If you go to quiz statistics, I'm not really interested in this part of my screen, but this part of my screen is where I'd really need to concentrate on. Can you see every single one of my students got it wrong? Okay, which is not a great one to demo necessarily, but great to show me that I shouldn't move on with my material. I need to go back over what allegory means. So you can see the right answer there. You can see all of my class, each one misunderstood, got it wrong. And if you've got, say, 30 students in your class, what you'll be able to see is groups of students that got things right that you can move on with, and groups of students you might want to pull back and actually reteach some content to. And if you've done a Hinge question really well, it'll also show you what their issues are and where they got it wrong, particularly in things like maths, where you can do a Hinge question and work out from there, working out what their issue was. So for these kids, I really do need to check the gas. And so when I'm checking the gas, they can then stop for coffee with my students. So what I mean by that, go on, sorry.
Just stop for coffee for a bit,
sure.
Sue. And I'm reminded what an allegory is. Of course, I knew. But I think it's really interesting. I wanted to ask, would you do that quiz in class, or in this hybrid setting where you have some students online and some in the class? Would you say, when you're teaching the students in the class, get everyone to do the quiz together and then give feedback to all of them? Or would this be an activity you'd get them to do before they come to class, or in a more asynchronous sense? How would you use this in your
either way?
in your
So
team?
typically a Hinge question is sort of like in class with all your students. So you just quickly get the data, and then you can move on with others and not move on with those who need you to sort of go over and speak to them. But in a hybrid setting, there's no harm at all in, you know, letting the students who are at home do this in their time, and letting the students in front of you do it in their time. It's not really about when you set it that's the thing. It's what you do with the data that's the issue. So yeah, you can set this homework. You can set it at the end of, you know, if you're teaching about what, say, allegory is in your online lesson, then set it at the end, and then you'll know for next time with your material what it is that you need to prepare and which students you need to move out for this stop for coffee kind of idea. But yeah, I don't think it's necessarily the setting of it. It's the drawing out that data so that you can actually help the kids independently or as a group.
Okay, awesome. Let's get coffee now.
Okay. You do need to stop me. I get on a rant with these things. So yeah, stopping for coffee. What I mean here is don't give your kids coffee, obviously. That would not be fun. But just stopping to make that time, obviously, for the asynchronous or the synchronous learning. Well, probably synchronous here is what I mean, actually. The synchronous times where you're going to check in with students and deliver online material face-to-face. So in previous webinars, actually, that Logan and I have done, when COVID first hit, we did, or Logan did a great webinar on getting online sort of in a pinch, in how to do it quite quickly. And there was a sort of format that we were saying about 80% of your time asynchronous and 20% synchronous. But when you're doing that synchronous session, either face-to-face or through your video conferencing software, what you really want to do is make it as productive and as worth your time as possible. So this is where I would use the data I've got in the sort of check the gas, the formative data, to then make sure that when I'm stopping for coffee with my students, not only am I building relationships and just checking in with them, their mental health, you know, checking how they're going, but also I'm making that time really productive because I'm teaching directly to their needs. And so stopping for coffee is essentially just that. I've got no real demo in my site for that. It is more the face-to-face interaction or the synchronous time. And being as you're all joining us on a system where we're synchronously live, I'm sure that you have got your own systems for doing that and are really au fait with doing that. Okay, now the next one is really important to me, I think, and I've seen many teachers actually like really exhaust themselves through what it is that they set, particularly if you're early on in the teaching journey. A number of my young teachers in my department, I can remember just swamped with marking, swamped with things that they set, you know, diligently trying to mark everything to the absolute best of their ability, and really sort of, you know, ran out of steam. And so what I want to say in this avoid fatigue idea is that when you set up your online learning, please don't set everything up via assignments. You only really want to use assignments when you are actually going to take work in and mark it. So assignments is a tool that I would advise you to use with a lot of discernment. As you can see here, I'm driving my unit, I'll zoom in again. I'm driving my unit through a variety of different items. So the majority you should be able to identify as pages. So this is this icon here. The majority of these are pages and they are content. So it's like students consume content. When I do want them to interact, the majority of the time I'm using quizzes. So I've got quizzes, Hinge questions, and it's very few times that I actually want an assignment. And when I do want an assignment, as in here, I've got a class assessment for writing an introduction. I think I duplicated that in a demo one time, but it should just be the write an introduction. And I've got it ready for them to submit. And I've also put a rubric on it to help me with my marking. So I'll just click onto that one and show you what I mean. You know, I've got them to submit. I've actually made, yeah, this is the right one. I've made a little video of what I want them to do in their submission. So hopefully it's not miss, what do I need to do? What do I need to do? And they can actually, if they wanted to, because I'm using our conferencing, video tools studio, they can actually write comments in here. So you can see I did a few demos for me, and then a few of my students have added a few more. But then I can see, and I know that they can always go back and watch my instructions and watch my what I want them to do. And then at the end of it, I have the rubric. So this is a simple 7-point rubric. I've used this. Oh gosh, I started using this at Barker. I've used this maybe for 4 years. So I've made it and I just keep using it. So this is my introduction rubric, and it's generic. So don't feel like all your rubrics have to be task specific. You can make them generic so you can keep reusing them. And so that's what I would mean about obviously not making too much work for yourself in terms of using pages the majority of the time, using assignments with discernment. And then one more thing I want to show you along with this is down in Unit 8 of my course, that's 7, down in Unit 8, in one of my quizzes. So this quiz here, just to show you that, obviously I've got a quiz here for students to do. This is on letter writing and then the basics of letter writing. And again, I've put more effort into the building of this in the first instance. And so if I just show you the question detail, I've done the multiple choice, but then I've also put in a comment about that's the wrong answer. So this basically is going to help them to know why it's wrong. And I've seen this work fantastically for things like maths, where you put the right equation in or the right working out in. But just, it takes a little bit longer, but not too much. And then if you think how many times that's going to help inform my teaching and inform their understanding of why they got it wrong, if they get it wrong, without me having to repeat that all the time. Okay. So another way of avoiding fatigue is making a lot of your sort of marking be in quizzes, and then using quiz function to actually put right and wrong answers, the explanation of why it's right and wrong in as well, so that they know why they got what they got. Okay, so I'm on the bottom of our road here. It's a good time to pause and ask Logan, have you got anything to add at this stage before I get into getting your passengers talking?
Before I pick up the speed again. I really like that tip around trying to reduce marking load. I think teachers, and it's a point of frustration because you want to really give a lot of feedback, but you don't have time, and you feel like you're doing a disservice to your students if you're not giving that feedback. And that's what I think it creates a lot of stress and anxiety too. And then you're up late at night doing all that marking. So I think it's a really good step to say, only use the assignments when you absolutely need to, otherwise don't. A good time-saving technique I felt when I love that giving that feedback on the quizzes, but that can take time. You can record a little video as a feedback response.
True. Yeah.
So you can talk through a response, or even if you have open-ended questions, that's a little bit tricky, but you can provide a model answer, and you can say that's your open-ended answer. This is the model answer, and then do like a discussion post, or those synchronous sessions when you're checking the gas. Review and give kind of collective feedback to all of the students and say like, so for that discussion, I submitted a couple of model answers, and a lot of you were saying this, which is great, and a lot of you are saying that, which is great. So there are these different techniques that you can use to save you time. But I think also for the student, if they get like a little recording, and if you're giving them that feedback in class, that feedback is often lost, and maybe the student isn't in that place, frame of mind to really digest that feedback, right? Because, I've just got an A+, I've smashed this, I'm celebrating, I'm not really listening to your feedback, but that recording, they can go back in later and listen to that too. So there are advantages to doing it online.
Yeah, also, and the flip side of that, I've seen very upset students come out of I remember a year 12 class, and the marking was done by a young teacher. She marked probably some of the standard English students' responses, probably put more comments on than some of the students had actually written at that stage. And one of them was very disappointed and put his essay straight in the bin on the way out of class. And so that's, for her, that was so much marking just straight in the bin. For him, he never obviously got all that feedback, couldn't have calmed down, got it out of the bin later. But, you know, if that sort of feedback and help is through video, it doesn't need to be polished at all. Just say it, you know. And so, yeah, then they can always come back and access it later, for sure.
Yeah, that would be heartbreaking.
I know, I've probably got to stop telling that story. I feel like I've told it a lot now, but it's a true story, and it would have been heartbreaking both for the teacher and, yeah, you know, all that learning that he could have got from that at another time. Absolutely. All right, well, I'm going to segue into getting passengers talking, because we've had a nice conversation here. And so getting passengers talking, what I mean here is by using discussions. So one of the things, obviously, that we're really aware of is, depending on your model of hybrid learning, you might have some students at home some days, you might have some students in the classroom and flip that, but you still want a sense of continuity of your student body as a group. And if you've got students maybe long-term at home because, you know, they've got particular needs and particular vulnerabilities maybe to COVID, and so they're doing all of their education at home, you still want them to be very connected to what's going on in the classroom. And discussions are a fantastic way of doing that, because discussions can be accessed, obviously, by those in class, by those at home, by the teacher, by learning support teachers, anybody involved in the course, and they can obviously take place totally asynchronously. So to get passengers talking, I'm just going to show you one of my discussions. So this one, I think, power always corrupts. So just, you know, this one particularly is just a, you know, a do you agree or disagree kind of idea. So just, you know, getting them thinking about something that's going to be a little bit controversial. And then what I like to do is tell students how many words I'm expecting them to respond in, particularly if I'm going to use the post once before you see other people's replies. I just think that helps to have that sense of equity, that when they've responded, they didn't write far too much or they didn't write far too little, and then they get embarrassed that, you know, everybody else wrote more than them, that sort of thing. So I know I like to tell them how many words to use. And so also in this one, I've actually told them that there's a rubric. And so what I've done of late, and this isn't something I used to do in my teaching with discussions, but what I've done of late is actually create a discussion rubric. Now, discussion rubrics don't appear underneath a discussion like they would do for an assignment. So in some ways, that's a bit counterintuitive. You have to teach your kids where to look for them. But in the three dots here that I like to call the kebab menu, you go to the kebab menu and then go show rubric. You can actually have a rubric that you can use again and again for discussions. And I love this one. I stole this from a blended learning guru in the States called Caitlin Tucker. She's got a fantastic book on blended learning in action. And she uses this rubric for discussions, basically saying what I say. So you can mark your students quickly on what it is that they say, how they say it. So you're expecting them to actually speak to each other in a, you know, I'm probably talking more high school here, but you're expecting them to speak to each other in a certain way, because it is still a kind of school discussion forum. And then how they engage with each other as well. So, you know, are you expecting them to reply to another student's post, etc.? So if you got together and wrote a few discussion rubrics, then it kind of adds a little bit more weight when you want to a discussion. So I wouldn't use this all the time. I'd only use it for really important discussions. But I do use this phrase all the time: post once, reply twice, because I want them to give me their thoughts and I want them to talk to each other. So as with everything, you need to train students in the way that you want them to do it. And I know we haven't had the luxury of that with the way that COVID hit. But as you're going forward, keep thinking about, how do I want to train my students to do this online learning? And post once, reply twice is a nice little slogan. I think I need it on a T-shirt, guys. You can get that for me.
Sure. Christmas present.
Yeah. Okay. Now, the next one is pimp your ride. And so what I mean by this, it just keeps indulging me on this metaphor. But what I mean by this is that we really want students to be engaged with the content that we present. And obviously we know we can give them textbooks, we know we can give them handouts. And if you're like me, you've spent many years at the photocopier, you know, breaking it, getting stuck with, you know, things not loading in the photocopying queue with other teachers. But the great thing about obviously having Canvas at your fingertips is that you can use the rich content that we can put into an online learning system. So by Pimp Your Ride, what I mean is, you know, it doesn't just have to be written content. Do have a look, obviously, at what you can do with videos, and not just with videos, but how you can obviously put things like YouTube clips, etc., into your actual lessons. So for this one, I'm just going to show you a simple, you know, lesson on film terminology. So, you know, this one's using a template. Obviously, actually, I think all of them are using this template, but I've got my lesson goal here. That's pretty simple. But then I've built in, you know, it's not just read, it's actually watch this video. And this is just a YouTube video, but in 4 minutes, 12 seconds, it's teaching them everything I want them to know about camera shots, camera angles, etc. And then underneath that, you know, I've got linked into here. This is an image for them to essentially, you know, copy out, whatever. But that's the diagram. And then I have a number of my worksheets and things linked in. And then I finish the lesson with a quiz. You know, so that's kind of like a standard sort of lesson, but with some video content as well as some reading, etc. Pitching this around, I think that was a year 7 sort of module there. But yeah, pitching that around, sort of thinking, okay, what can I use for engagement, and, you know, putting YouTube videos in and things like that, or videos you've made yourself, going to help with that engagement with students. So where you can, put images in, put videos in, do something that isn't just the sort of flat text, bring it to life a little bit for your students. And that's my Pimp Your Ride. All right, we're nearly there, guys. How are we doing for time? Not bad. So the next, are we doing all right? Yep.
Yeah, we're all right.
Yeah, plenty of time.
The next one is grouping your passengers. So you'll group them when you check the gas, because you'll create those groups of people from the formative assessments who need a bit more help, or who need enrichment or extension, you know. But then also grouping your passengers within groups on Canvas is a great way to actually get them working together. And then you can set things like assignments, discussions, etc. to your groups. And when you set an assignment to a group, it means that if you want to mark it as a group, you mark it once. So say I've got 7 students, say I've got 28 students in my class, I make 4 groups of 7. And then if I set an assignment as a group, when they've finished working on it, you know, one of the groups submit it, I then mark it as a group, and that one feedback goes to all 7 responses. Now you might think, okay, what about if little Johnny didn't do a very good job? Or what about if, you know, Adam never participated at all, just talked? Yeah. Well, in that case, what we'd need to do there, just slip that in for Adam. In that case, what we would do there is we could still mark it for all 7, but we could adjust Johnny and Adam's mark. So it's, although we can use the one mark fits all, we've also got opportunities within the system to make adjustments as well. So grouping your passengers, I'm just going to show you very briefly where you'd find that. So if I go to my people in my course, and then over here you have something called a group set. So you can make group sets per, you know, per task, or you could just have them, you know, for, say if you come into us from primary, you might have groups for literacy, for numeracy, that sort of thing. You know, if you're a secondary school, you might have groups based on achievement or attainment, or friendship groups. I spoke to one year 12 teacher earlier in the year, and she was going to use groups to form the tables that, you know, when year 12 pile in and they all sit in the same spot with their mates, she was going to use groups to be like that table of mates. And so they had their own group space. And so here there's groups set up per assignment. And you can see that I've got a number of students here who are unassigned to a group. But in here, if I click on here, Coco and myself as my student profile are in a group. And then what that means is, as a group, it kind of replicates Canvas for them. So they have a group environment where they can hold discussions, they can talk to each other. You can set work to that group, and it forms that environment just for the group. If there's anything you see today, incidentally, where you kind of go, I'd love to know how to do that, because I'm not doing the how today, I'm just doing the showing. Our Canvas guides on the community, you know, if you just go and search how do I make groups, you'll be able to find all the answers and stuff there. But that's
you can also talk to your CSM as well.
you
We'd
can
love to
also
kind of
talk
talk
to your
throughout this.
CSM.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
so booking sessions.
We've also prepared a little handout that we'll send you at the end of this webinar that have links to little things on how to set up your groups, how to use module prerequisites, and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we've got some goodness for you at the end. All right, my last two are not necessarily to show you on Canvas, but just in terms of overall encouragement. And I know you'll know these things, but I remember, so obviously, as I said in the acknowledgement of country, I'm based in Sydney. So I'm using the New South Wales syllabus for English in my teaching, obviously. And it's packed. It's a packed syllabus. And not only that, but in the independent schools I've taught in, we also add stuff on top of the packedness, if that makes sense. So I've got my teaching program, I've got what I need to cover, I've got extension and enrichment, and then I've got kind of like what I would say icing on the cake material, so great, fantastic, great stuff to do. But I think one of the things to think about at this point of time, if you're in the situation of hybrid teaching, is just sort of pare back to what you absolutely need to do. So when I say follow the route, I mean, don't get distracted by, oh, I could do this or I could do that, or I found this awesome, amazing resource, but I've already covered it. I don't know, whatever it is, just try and pare back to what you absolutely need. Do it really well. Do it to the outcomes that you need in the syllabus, and just then, I guess, make sure it's cemented and move on. So following the route, avoiding distractions. And then my final point is, whilst you're doing all of these things, you're surviving. What our hope is for you is that you go from surviving to thriving. And so kids really respond, as you know, to how the teacher is. Kids are very sensitive to your level of stress and to how you're feeling as well. And so somewhere along the way, if we can stop and just sort of smell the roses, enjoy the ride a little bit, and make part of your online course an environment in which you still build relationships. So the discussion that I showed you back in number 6 with Get Passengers Talking, I would only use that with that 12-point criteria a number of times in a term, or a couple of, maybe 6 times a semester. The majority of my discussions I would have much more informal, and every week I would recommend to have a discussion post that is just a check-in, so like, I've seen the teachers do things like, what's your favorite pet? Take a screenshot, take a photo of your pet, and a discussion of, here's everybody's pets, or what's the favorite thing you did over the weekend? And obviously it's going to be age appropriate to, K through to 12. But just trying to stop and make sure that you're building those relational times into your online course as well. So that, we don't lose that beautiful relationship, which we know is so important between students and teachers, and students as well. So take a moment, step back. You're doing a fantastic job, and just, enjoy the ride, however it's been presented to us this year and ongoing. But hopefully, we can help you a little bit with some tips to make that a little bit more enjoyable. Okay, we've reached the end of the tips. I'm just gonna show you on screen what oh, my cat's expired. I'm just gonna show you on screen any second now what Logan is talking about in terms of what we've prepared for you. So this is everything that I've just stepped you through, and then Logan has so kindly today put links into essentially what was just my notes, but put links into how you do these things. So if anything has whetted your appetite today, or you think, oh yeah, that could be helpful for the future, Logan's got this sheet ready to go with links for you all. All right, I'm going to hand over to Logan, and I'm going to stop for coffee and see if he's got anything to add.
That was fantastic, Sue. Let's say Sue, because I was going to say you should enjoy the ride. Like that was brilliant. I like how you put all of those things in together, and I'm going to keep thinking about the bus now and driving. And I really like that using the discussion forums for fun sharing. An activity that I saw someone do once on discussions is to get, instead of asking students how they feel, to get them to share a meme that they felt showed how they felt, so it's a very kind of young person thing, I guess, I'm being told, to express your feelings with pictures and images. And it was just fun for then others to kind of go through that forum and look at the really fun memes that others were sharing. So that's a great idea.
Yeah, incidentally, we did that when COVID hit. I ran some online training for the Anglican groups of schools, and one of our discussion posts, there was 5 sessions, and every session, I led it with a meme, and teachers piled in with their memes about how they were feeling. So it doesn't just work for students. If you're doing any professional learning online as well, take some time just to check in with how you're feeling. And memes are great ways of doing it, I think. So
we've got some questions. So if anyone has questions, to pop them to the comments would be fantastic. I had a customer actually raise a question, so I could ask that one first. Did you want to raise something, Rio?
No, just ask some questions on the chat if you've got any. But while we're kind of waiting, obviously for those that weren't at CanvasCon last week already, the recordings are up. So if you haven't checked out Sue's amazing webinar up from last week, that'll be up shortly as well. So definitely check it out. There's some keynotes that were presented last week and some breakout sessions. So there's a lot of great content there. We're also all about sharing and creating this community as well and nurturing this community. So next week we have a K-12 user group, which is, the topic is differentiation. So, if people have things to share on that user group, we'd love to hear from you. We'd love for you to share, and love to kind of allow you to share with other customers of what you're doing at your school. So, get in touch with the CS team, definitely.
So while we wait for questions to come in, I've got one, Sue, and this is not something I've run with you before. So, surprise! Sure. I know that it's more fun that way, right? Different ways to run hybrid classrooms. I guess you could do 1 week face-to-face, 1 week online. One of my customers has, I think they have a model where half the class is face-to-face and the other half is online, and then they take turns just to have more distancing in the classroom. And the thing they raised with me is it's always difficult to ensure that you're being equitable to the kids that are online, because it always they're not in front of you. The other people who are zooming into the live conference, and then it is the people, the students in the classroom that are asking questions, and you're teaching to them and not to the ones who are at home. And they were asking if there are ways to kind of create some kind of balance, or maybe even center or give an advantage to the ones who are at home, so they feel like they're in a special place. I don't know. What are your thoughts on ways that they can address that situation?
Yeah, I think at least, I mean, in some ways it is inequitable, but then it will flip for the students who maybe do the online learning the next week to make it equitable. If you've got a student who's long-term away because of illness, then they're going to, I think, start sensing the not being part of it a little bit more. But I would actually talk to your students. I think student voice in this is huge. So if, let's depends on the age of the student. Obviously, I'm a high school, so I do gravitate much more towards the students who can actually, I guess, very much voice and have a voice into their learning a lot. But I would sort of say, look, we've got this situation where we're going to have students at home. So that'll be you next week, or that's you this week, or whatever. What can we do as a class to make it so that we all feel included? And I think what's going to work in one situation might not work in another. But even when you're in the class together, some students, maybe more in primary, they have they hold the teddy to talk, or they have the talking stick, or that sort of stuff. Maybe you can get some sort of online equivalent for that, or you can, purpose one of your children to be like, oh, Miss so-and-so's got his hand up online on the chat, so you've actually got students involved in in the experience, because that'll be them the next few days. And so the more that they understand, I feel like this when I'm at home, and my friend feels like this when they're at home, I think to create that collective rules for you and your space, I think, would be my advice there. You know, I've not got a magic answer there at all. I just think talk to them and work out and also you could bring the parents into that discussion as well. You know, we're really trying to, you know, I know some teachers who start the year every year with like their class rules or their class agreement and that sort of thing, or there might even be that within you. There might even be that within your school. So lots of schools have, you know, that class agreement as stuff. But however, if you can then narrow it down to your space, it's still the kids' space as well. Let's try and bring them into the conversation as much as we can.
Yeah, I love the suggestion on giving the students roles. I think that takes some of the burden away from the teachers, but empowers the students too. It gives them some response, and they come up with different ways and different ideas to help the peers feel included.
I think it's just reimagining it. Like I have a 6-year-old, as you know, he's often in our Zoom calls and stuff, but he loves it at school when he's the line monitor, right? So they get to walk at the front of the line and everyone has to follow them, you know, and it's like, it's made his week when he's the line monitor. And he also, when you're the line monitor, you also have to be responsible for putting the pens on the desks and stuff like that, you know. So I'm not saying this is going to work at a kindy level, but, you know, as they get sort of age appropriateness, can we start you could start thinking, okay, that's something I'm going to train up, you know, a couple of my class leaders to do. You know, you might have, you know, group A, B, C, D, whatever. And in each one of them, they've got a turn at doing that, you know, so yeah.
So it looks like we've got a question come through. So for Sue, do you have any suggestions for organising everything on Canvas in a way for younger children to find easy and access and use?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And I was challenged again with this when my little one started doing at-home learning. So he wasn't on Canvas, he was on another platform called Seesaw that I'm sure a lot of you are aware of. But yeah, the younger the kid is, the harder it is to sort of access the material online as such. So I would look at maybe going to either leading through pages, so it's very simple to step the students through, and instead of written instructions, everything would be from me video instructions. And then when depends whether you're using the app as well, because the app is a lot more there's often a lot more interface that's easier for younger students. But yeah, I don't think students find anything too hard with sequential learning in the younger years. You know, they can scroll and click. Like I know my 6-year-old on YouTube, they can watch the next thing for sure. So scroll and click is fine. And then instructions, you know, get them to, they're not going to type responses as such, but use text boxes if you do want them to type anything. So don't expect them to submit files. Just use a simple text box that they can actually write their answers into. And then I think I did a user group a while back for K-6 where I showed how my 6-year-old had spoken his kind of submission back using discussions and using the recording function within discussions. We do have a user. Rio, you can step in here. We have got a K-6 user group. Yeah.
So we had one a couple of months back, and we basically covered, you know, home pages, how the layout is, etc. So sorry if I butcher your name, but CP, it might be worth kind of sending, if you reach out to a CSM, your CSM, we'll get them to send you the link to that particular recording, because I think it's worth watching. But yeah, if for the next one, we'd encourage you to join that K-6 user group for sure.
Yeah. We've got the recording put in there as well in the link. Definitely great question. You know, the younger the child, the more simple you want to go, the simplest as possible, and video instruction all the way.
Okay, I think there's not many more questions coming through. So thank you very much, Sue, for your amazing presentation. I've learnt, 10 tips already. And Logan, thank you very much for, just engaging and providing some really good, intricate information from a hiring
Helping me
perspective
breathe.
as well. Yeah. All right, we'll leave you to it from here. But thank you very much for joining, and hope to see you at the next one. All right, thanks, guys. Bye.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.